Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. As always, proudly in association with Andy's Man Club. Lads, remember, it's okay to talk. Tonight we are 100% British, but as always, we are still 100% Giants. Apologies to those who were looking forward to therapy session number 3 on Monday night. Unfortunately, things happened that we couldn't avoid cancelling that one. So apologies to those that were waiting to tune in and hear us vent about the Cowboys game, but we're moving on. It's week 4, and I'm back joined by Craig this evening, and also Shane will be joining us shortly as well, live from Marbella of all places, to preview our week 5 game with our first and only trip out west this season, as we take on the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday evening in what is no doubt going to be our toughest test of the 2024 season so far. Lots to talk about this evening. Craig, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. Just to sort of kind of echo Dan's point on Monday, like we appreciate the kind of outpouring of love and everything that we had. Obviously, everything's okay. It was just an unforeseen circumstance that just led to us having to cancel that review pod. Blessing in disguise, maybe, that we didn't have to talk about that game potentially. And we can just kind of review that and not even have to think about it now and move on with the future. So, yeah, good. Looking forward to this in a weird masochistic way, because obviously we know that the Giants are not great. But, it is what it is. We just have to roll through the season, don't we?
We absolutely do. Evening, Darren. Thanks for tuning in. It's week 5. We're 1-3. It's not been great so far, and it's a tough game at the weekend. It's a tough game on Sunday against the Seahawks. We'll get into the game in a bit, but yeah, it's not looking pretty this weekend. But we're still here, regardless. Through the few ups and many downs that we'll probably have over this 2024 season, because trust me, there's going to be plenty more.
Yeah. If you really want to sum up how well this game potentially, little spoiler for the rest of the day, but Bill's just put from Jordan Renan. So good chance the Giants are without 57% of their total offense and 83% of their touchdowns in Seattle, with Singletary possibly out. Thanks, Bill, for being the bearer of good news there. Appreciate that.
Starting off the evening in the right way with some bad news. Damn it. But no, I appreciate that. That's a great little stat. That 57% of our total offense and 83% of the touchdowns not on the field. Oh dear. Doesn't sound good, does it? Let's face it. Oh, here he is, sunning himself up and looks rather tanned.
Just a little bit.
Shane, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, man, living the dream now. 28 degrees here. I don't know what it was like that back there, but same for like it was when I left at the start of the week. It's vastly different over here.
It's 8 degrees and pretty cold over here, so you're not missing out much.
Well, you could keep it. I could say that much.
Nice. Well, thanks for jumping on live from sunny Spain. How you been anyway? Obviously, we missed the review on Monday of the Cowboys game, which, let's face it, wasn't going to be much to talk about. But you looking forward to this weekend?
Probably not. That might give you a bit of a hint as to what my prediction might be at the end of the show.
Quite possibly. Stay tuned to find out his predictions. It's going to be quite interesting. But yeah, so we're going to crack on and get into it. Don't forget this week coming up in 4 short weeks, should I say, we've got our next watch party at the Sports Bar and Grill at Marylebone Station, 3rd of November at 6 p.m. For our divisional legacy game against the Washington Commanders. If you're thinking of coming to join us, let us know via DM. We look forward to seeing everyone that comes down, and hopefully we have a good night and celebrate a Giants win as well. And for those that are watching live on YouTube, X, Twitch, Facebook, wherever you're watching, get involved in the comments, as Bill and Darren already have done. Send us your questions. Let us know your thoughts about the Seahawks game at the weekend as well. And in general, just get involved. throw them in, and we'll bring as many up on screen as we can. Now, kicking off tonight, Craig sat down earlier with Tim Booth from the Seattle Associated Press to get his take on the 2024 Seahawks and a little bit of a preview of the game. So we've got that chat coming up for you right about now. Enjoy.
Recorded, however, we will be putting it up obviously for you guys now. Tim, let's start off just quickly. Part of the Associated Press covering Seattle sports as a whole, but not for much longer by the sounds of things.
No, this is actually the Giants game on Sunday is going to be my last assignment working for the Associated Press. I've taken a job with the Seattle Times, and I'm going to be starting there on Monday, giving myself a whole bunch of time off in between job changes. But so it'll definitely be a change. I've been working for the AP for the last 20 years. So it'll be it's something new to go and try out. But I'm thankful for my time with the AP, but I'm really looking forward to this new opportunity.
And I'm guessing not a lot really changes in the terms of who you're covering, right?
No, not really. I'm just going to be a little bit more focused on a few things. One of the things about being an AP sports writer is you're kind of responsible for everything that's in your market. And I'll still have a hand in the Seahawks. I'll still have a hand in the baseball team here, the Seattle Mariners. But a couple of my primary focuses are going to be the hockey team, the Seattle Kraken, and then there's a lot of attention, a lot of hope, a lot of excitement about the possibility of the NBA coming back and the return of the Supersonics. And so that's going to be one of my kind of primary things, is following that saga as it plays out likely over the next couple of years.
Cool. So let's get into Seattle, into the Seahawks now then. So this is the first season since 2010 that the Seahawks have a new head coach. They don't have Pete Carroll anymore, which is very strange to all of us who followed the NFL for as long as I have and some of the others. How has Mike McDonald settled in, and are we starting to see him mold his team?
Yes. Yeah, you are starting to see it. He settled in pretty well. There's some things that, a first-time coach is never going to experience until they go through it in that role and having that sort of responsibility that comes along with it. It's really, I think one of the smartest moves he made this offseason was bringing in Leslie Frazier as an assistant, because that's someone who has been around the game forever, has been in the seat of being a head coach, can kind of help guide him or be an ear to talk to and give advice on about certain situations that may have come up so far. So I think that pairing was really smart by Mike McDonald, especially too when you brought in a first-time defensive coordinator, you brought in a first-time NFL offensive coordinator. You had a lot of kind of welcome to the league sort of things that kind of came together with this coaching staff. So bringing in Leslie Frazier, I thought was a really, really smart move on his part. And yeah, you can start to see some of the imprints that he's trying to make on the team already sort of coming to light a little bit. Like there's just I guess it's a professionalism. He's a very no nonsense kind of guy, very just like to the point. Isn't gonna sit there and give you stories of his history or his background or situations he's been in before. He's just going to answer your question, and he expects that from his players. He expects just the job to get done. So I wouldn't necessarily call him like a player's coach in the same way that Pete was. He's just very no nonsense and expects you to go out and do your job. And if you don't do your job, then he expects a correction to be made, and he's going to facilitate the most straightforward way to make that correction and move on from it. So it's a far different environment than what it was under Pete Carroll, when it was basketball games and scooters and this very players only or player friendly environment. It's a little different now, but it's probably the thing that this franchise needed at this point.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Pete's still there though, right? As an advisor?
It's a position and title only is probably the best way I'd say it. Like he has purposely not been around You're more likely to see him across the lake at the University of Washington, where his son Brennan is the offensive coordinator over there, than you are likely to see him at the Seahawks facility anytime soon. So that was, it was kind of like the soft landing sort of title that they kind of came up with in order to make the move that they did in pushing Pete out the door. It's their way of kind of keeping him connected in a way to the franchise, but he's not around. He's not actively involved in anything. He did a interview with a local radio station about a month ago where he said that the only interaction he had with Mike McDonald so far was one day when they ran into each other in the parking lot. That's been it so far. So yes, he has a title and he has an affiliation with the organization still in that way, but it's not something that's actively being done at this point.
So in the preseason, DK Metcalf spoke of an early meeting between him and new OC Ryan Grubb and a lot of the other players. And Grubb was kind of saying, "Hey, look, my college tape is an explosive passing offense, but we're going to run the ball." And that kind of hasn't happened as of yet. But do you think with Walker healthy again, that might be a switch back to that, or is it kind of stick with what's working?
I think what you saw in the second half last week against Detroit is a little bit more along the lines of where they want to be with the balance in the offense. The first half against Detroit, they couldn't really run the ball very well. They got behind by 2 scores, and then they're just kind of playing catch up the whole time. But in that probably 12 or 15 to 17 minute range, early, from the start of the third quarter into early in the fourth quarter, they found that balance that they've kind of been seeking. And that comes with Ken Walker being back, because he is the kind of running back that has the elusiveness to make up for the fact that they don't have a great offensive line, especially run blocking wise. Zach Charbonnet he's a good running back, especially if you can block the hole open for him. Then he becomes really, really difficult to bring down because he's very physical. He gets downhill quickly. He runs through guys. Ken Walker is the guy who, when Anthony Bradford at right guard blows the block, well, Ken Walker can make that defensive lineman miss and then make something out of the play. And that's sort of it's kind of one of those fire and ice kind of combo things that they have with the running back crew that they have put together, is they each bring a little different trait to the running game. But Walker has that elusiveness, that missability, I guess, that skill of getting out of bad situations. And unfortunately, they have a very mediocre offensive line, and so they're in kind of, with their run game, bad situations a lot of the time. And so you need that guy who can make them miss. So that stretch you saw in the second half against the Lions, a little bit of what you saw in week 1 before Walker got hurt against Denver, that's more of the balance they want to have. They have a great downfield passing game. They have a quarterback who right now is playing in the top tier of the league, but they know that they need that certain amount of balance in the offense in order to make it as efficient as possible.
And obviously Walker had that ridiculous, I have no idea how to describe what he did against Detroit.
I think it was, when I was watching, I'm like, that looks like a move from back when I used to watch wrestling, when I was in college and watching WWE all the time and stuff like that. Like, I'm like, that was a wrestling move that he just pulled off. Like, it's one of the most athletic things I've ever seen on a football field. So more power to him for being able to do it, because I probably would have dislocated every joint in my body if I tried to do that.
So if we talk about, obviously, the offensive line not being sort of above average, the defense at the moment is just not healthy, right? Like, that's their biggest issue. 6 starters were missing from that Detroit Lions game. Obviously had a big bearing because the Lions just scored points upon points. The injury report, I haven't actually seen an injury report since Wednesday, admittedly, on this one, but it wasn't looking pretty at that time. What do you anticipate? Like, who will be back? Who's probably not going to be back?
I think you'll see Leonard Williams back, so he'll get to see some old friends. I think he'll be back this week. I don't think Byron Murphy, the rookie first-round pick out of Texas, I don't think he'll be back this week. I mean, he's a big explosive guy, and it's a hamstring, and that's always just a bad combo. So I think he'll not quite make it back this week. Boye Mafe, I think, will get back this week, which will help with the pass rush. Uchenna Nwosu, who's probably their best all-around defensive lineman and got hurt in the preseason and hasn't played yet. I think it's probably 50-50 about whether he gets back this week. They were really hopeful he was going to be back last week, which was why they didn't put him on injured reserve before the season or at the start of the season, because they thought he was going to be back within that first 4-game window, and then he didn't make it back. So I think there's a hope that he'll get some playing time this week. The big one for them, which it's looking promising that he'll play, is Julian Love in the secondary. The defensive line was obviously decimated last week and really thin in what they had available. But in the second half, without Julian Love out there, I think the Lions were really able to take advantage of some communication breakdowns that the Seahawks had. I think they were talking about just several blown busts that they haven't had through the first 3 games that all of a sudden showed up. And Julian Love, again, another former Giant player, he's really good at just kind of organizing everything back there. He is, it's a cliche to call a safety the quarterback of the defense, but he really is in that way. And they have such, just unique coverage schemes in how they play certain coverages and how they blitz out of it and how they show pressures and then drop out, then disguise things. You need that guy back there just to kind of keep the chaos organized. And I feel like in the second half last week, him not being out there led to some of those busts that they had in the secondary against the Lions. So it's looking hopeful that he'll play this week. But then, the one thing that Seattle has to take into account with all of this is they have to turn around and play San Francisco 5 days later. And so if some of those guys are kind of on the edge or on the fringe of being ready for Sunday, it might make them, it might be a better move to hold them out, see if you can get by the Giants, knowing that you have to play your division rival, 5 days later.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And, as you said, Leonard Williams, ex-Giant, Julian Love, ex-Giant, we know exactly what they bring to the table. And if we're being brutally honest, we've missed both of them really for their performances and what they bring to the table. Love especially. Beth, who's part of the podcast team, massive Notre Dame fan, so was devastated when Love went. So, yeah, not really looking forward to seeing them both on the field. We spoke earlier about offense, and you mentioned Geno Smith. He leads the NFL in passing yards, 1,182, and has a pretty good start to the season. Obviously, another ex-Giant as well. He does only have 4 touchdowns on the season. So what do you think the causes of that from somebody from the outside who hasn't maybe watched the Seahawks as intently?
A few things. He's playing really fast right now. He's always, the thing with Geno, he's always been really accurate. And I think that was something that was not appreciated in his previous stops, or even when he was a backup here in Seattle, was his accuracy is really, really good. And that's something that even the coaches have kind of privately commented on, is you watch Geno on tape and you were like, okay, the guy's pretty good. And then they got here in person and saw him actually, in practice and during the offseason program, and we're like, wow, this guy can actually, really, really spin it and put it in incredibly tight windows and be accurate with it, and not have some of those fluttering passes that have the potential of becoming turnovers. So you couple that with making very quick, very decisive decisions, very decisive reads within the system, that allows him not to have to hold the ball for long. He's done a pretty good job so far of not taking sacks, of going through his progressions fairly rapidly and finding what his options are. So there's that aspect of it as to why his numbers are where they are right now. And then you couple that with Ryan Grubb's system in college was heavily designed to create the best matchups possible through shifting, through formations, through running the same play just out of a totally different look, like little things like that. And it was highly successful in college. And I think we're starting to see it be highly successful in the NFL. it's not always going to be that way. Defensive coaches in the NFL are incredibly smart, as we all know, and the more tape that is out there, the more they're going to be able to find those tendencies and pick up on looks and find ways to try and counter that. But in the short term, in this this first 4-game sample, they've done a really good job of just creating situations that have put pressure on the defense and led to opportunities for the receivers at sort of different levels of the defense too. You're going to have your crosser underneath. You're going to have your check down out of the backfield, but you're also going to have a deep shot. And if that deep shot becomes available, that's the one that you're going to take. The touchdown to DK Metcalf against Miami, the 71-yarder in week 3, is kind of a perfect example of that, where the safety had to make a decision whether he came down on Jackson Smith and Jigba running an in route, or he stayed with DK Metcalf, who was faking to the post and then went on a go route. And once he made that first step forward toward where Smith and Jigba was, thinking that DK is running a post, all of a sudden you have a all-pro caliber receiver running wide open 50 yards downfield, which is not, I don't think, what the defense wants to have. So it's little things like that, little ways routes are combined together, run out of all these different sort of bunch formations or run out of motion, which are creating the opportunities. And then Geno's capitalizing on them. Again, he's made really smart decisions so far. Both of his, the 2 interceptions that kind of stand out. One was a tip ball, and the other one was a desperation, kind of had to throw it in the end zone against Detroit late in that game last week. So it's that melding of what this offense could potentially be with a quarterback who's really accurate that I think has led to the success that they've seen so far.
So before I let you go, there is one important question. We're going to do ours later in the show, but prediction for the weekend, what do you reckon?
I think Seattle should win this game pretty handily. No Malik Nabers. Devin Singletary is dealing with a little bit of a groin injury. I think even with Seattle's banged up defense, if Malik Nabers was playing, I think there would be a little bit more of a concern about what the Giants offensively might be able to do. New York has a really good defense, and that offensive line for Seattle is going to be tested, because that is without question the biggest weakness that the team has. Like right now, neither of their offensive guards can block anybody. They're playing a third string right tackle who, to his credit, has done actually really well so far. The one offensive lineman you feel really good about is Charles Cross, and how much is Kayvon Thibodeau going to be lined up against him and rushing against him? Who knows? But that's the one guy that you would want to have trying to block that guy coming off the edge. So if Seattle's offensive line can hold up, I think there's opportunities to get some plays against the Giants defense. And I just don't see the Giants offense being down Nabers, being able to do that much. I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game. This to me is like 27-14 or 24-10 or something like that. But I do think Seattle gets out of there with a fairly comfortable victory.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us, Tim. We're going to leave your Twitter handle in the description down below on the video. So if anybody is interested in following Tim, then please do. But thank you again.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it.
All right, then. That was, for those that just joined, that was Tim Booth from the Seattle Associated Press. They're soon to take a new job on Monday. So good luck with that, Tim. Talking about the Seahawks, and thanks so much for taking the time out of your no doubt busy schedule to chat to Craig. And as Craig said, check out his work by following his X handle in the description. All right, let's talk Giants. We've had enough talking Seahawks. Let's talk Giants. It's our keys to victory for this week. The 1-3 Giants travelled west to take on the 3-1 Seattle Seahawks at Lumen Field, previously known as the Clink or Century Link Field, as it's more commonly known or used to be known. With kickoff scheduled for 9:25 UK time, 4:25 Eastern. Since the Seahawks entered the league in 1976, there have only been 22 meetings between the two sides, but all of them have come in the regular season. And despite the low amount of meetings, this is now the third straight season that we've played them. The Seahawks lead the head-to-head 11-10, so we want to sort of tip the balance and make it a nice even 11-11 come Sunday. The Giants have to go back to the COVID season in 2020 for their last win against Seattle as they won 17-12 in Seattle at Lumen Field or CenturyLink Field, whatever it's called then, thanks to a pair of Alfred Morris touchdowns, believe it or not, and also a Graham Gano field goal. Last season, we don't need to talk about last season. The Seahawks won 24-3, and there was a 97-yard pick six of Daniel Jones by Devon Witherspoon. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Craig, how are we looking offensively for this weekend, mate?
Yeah, so, I mean, 2 injuries, as Bill's already covered in the comments earlier, 2 injuries that are really going to derail us this coming week, and that's what we've got to talk about, really. The key to winning this game is probably going to be to score points. The Seahawks average 25.5 a game. We average 15, and our biggest threat's out. Our biggest threat on offense is out. Obviously, it was revealed earlier, for those who don't know, that Nabers is still in the concussion protocol, and Brian Dable has said that he's a no-go on Sunday, basically. That means that the Giants will be without their star wide receiver for the first time this season, and considering he is pretty much the majority of our offense, that's really, really going to hurt us. He's averaging 12.75 targets a game, so pretty much 13 targets a game, and has a 38.6 target share amongst every single receiver that has been targeted this year. So that is a massive, massive chunk to disappear. Now, the next receiver with the highest share is Wan'Dale Robinson, who has an impressive 28% target share, which I believe is 5th or 6th highest in the league, which is absolutely mental considering Nabers is first, obviously. But to have an offense that's struggling as much as we are, yet have 2 of the most targeted wide receivers, I guess speaks volumes, because it kind of makes us a bit one-dimensional or two-dimensional, I guess, with those 2. But the problem is Wan'Dale's not your number 1 receiver. He is the slot guy who is going to get yak and he's going to punish you, but he's not going to be that dominant number 1. He's not going to take over from Nabers this week. That's for sure. The worry is kind of behind him. Slayton has 15 targets, 10 receptions, but a team leading 3 drops, including one of the ones last week that was an absolute killer, and we just can't have that happen. And Jalen Hyatt, the forgotten man, really, 3 targets, no receptions, really is just not helping at the moment, and he's not getting enough snaps really to bump his numbers up. And we're really going to have to see a big game from him. If you look at the tight ends, though, Johnson and Bellinger, 9 targets, 5 catches, 57 yards. I mean, they're not reliable outlets for Jones. So it really does worry you, because they've been predominantly used as blocking tight ends. My second point is on the running back room. So I'll kind of talk about the blocking side of the tight ends afterwards. But Shane, with Nabers now a no-go on Sunday, do you think this increases the pressure tenfold on Jones, seeing as he's now going to have to rely on his other receivers, which he has barely done this season so far?
Yeah, definitely. You're going to kind of see what Daniel Jones is kind of made of. Because like obviously he had that poor week 1 game, but then ever since then he's been pretty steady. He's done nothing amazing. He's done nothing to go and win your games, but he has been pretty steady, to be fair to him. Now he's big shiny new toy that we went out and got for him in the draft, and we kind of said, yeah, now he's got Nabers, he's got a true alpha he can go to. Now we're going to see what he can do without that alpha, and could we potentially see more of the Daniel Jones from week 1, who's got no faith in people getting open, no faith in their route running. You're going to get a little bit, nervous in the pocket. I think it's going to be kind of a real test, and it'll give a true indication as to what kind of Daniel Jones we've kind of got here. Is it going to be the kind of Daniel Jones that you might be able to turn around and say, we can win games with. Not he's going to win you a Super Bowl, but we can at least win games with. Or is it going to be a case of take away his number one target and he's the Daniel Jones that we kind of don't want to see?
Dan, what are your thoughts on this? Because obviously we're almost back to last year now. We didn't see a lot of DJ last year, but we kind of know what we've got with those three receivers, and they're not game breakers.
No, obviously the pressure is going to be on DJ to get his other receivers involved, and not just that, but to get your tight ends involved as well. Because I'll come on to tight ends in a minute as well, and it also puts the pressure on Daves and Kafka as well, because they've got to draw up an offensive game plan without the number one receiver and potentially without the number one running back as well. So they need to really become creative with their offensive game planning. James, expecting a big week from Hyatt, so am I. He needs to see way more snaps than he's been seeing over the last 4 weeks, and I expect him to. I can't see any other way around it than to give Hyatt more snaps. But obviously, Slade becomes the de facto number one receiver shortly on the outside. He needs to step up big time. He needs to stop dropping the damn ball as well. Hyatt bringing him, he gets brought into contention more, increasing his snaps, which can only be a good thing, because we haven't seen anywhere near as much of him as we should have done this season so far. Wandale, keep doing what Wandale does. Stay in the slot. Do what you need to do. Maybe even look at promoting someone like Isaiah Hodgins from the practice squad just to fill in for a week. There you go, Bill. Look, great minds think alike. Boom. But yeah, it's going to be a massive miss not having Nabers in the team. Leading the league in targets and receptions. So his presence alone is definitely going to be missed on Sunday. But I think people have generally, because Nabers has been so good, I think people have overlooked Wandale's impact on the team, and I think he's not getting the credit he deserves. Like you said, he's fifth in the league with in terms of targets with 38. So he's been a big part of the offensive plan so far this year. But they really need to get the tight ends involved more. 10 targets in total for the tight ends just isn't good enough. We've got Theo Johnson. Yeah, granted he's a rookie, but fourth round pick, and Daniel Bellinger. There's receiving potential there, but we're just not utilising them at all. I think it's a massive game for this offense. One thing we really need to sort of iron out is in the red zone. We need to punch it in for 6. We can't keep driving down the field, and then stalling and having to kick a field goal. Because, look at last week. Kicking field goals doesn't win you games. You might scrape by the skin of your teeth in one game because your kickers kicked 7 out of 7, like Washington did. But that's an anomaly. To win games in this league, you need to score touchdowns, and we need to punch it in when we're in the red zone and score 6 rather than getting 3 on the board. So there's pressure on the whole offense this week, not just Daniel Jones.
Well, I guess speaking of pressure on the whole offense, let's talk about the fact that we might also not have Devin Singletary, who I believe we'll go through the full injury report later, but I believe he's doubtful for the game, which is not ideal. Another weapon who's heavily used. He outsnaps the other 2 running backs massively. He's been pretty much the lead back throughout the entirety of the beginning of the season. We've barely seen Eric Gray. It's not as much of an impact as Nabers, but maybe it is in a different light if you look at it from a different angle. Tyrone Tracy has been a clear backup to Singletary, but has 15 snaps versus Singletary's 74 and has 29 yards on 12 attempts. Eric Gray, even less, 6 snaps, 4 rushes, 7 yards. Both players are featured in the kickoff game more than they have in the backfield. But one thing that is for sure is they both also fumbled in kickoff. So you hope that fumble bug isn't there, because we can't afford offensive turnovers this week. We need to almost play a perfect game, which sucks in a way, because obviously we don't have our biggest weapon, and now we probably don't have the number 2 biggest weapon as well. Rely on that run game. I know it didn't really come off against the Cowboys, and really it should have done, but they stacked the box so much that it was impossible to get a run going. They basically turned around and went, "All right, Jones, beat us with your arm," and we couldn't. We could drive, but we just couldn't sort of, as Dan said, punch it in at the end. So that's another one. So Dan, like I just said last week, no success in the run game. Technically, you could see that maybe not as big of an issue. Are you kind of worried that we're basically going to put out two unproven players now in the running game because we really don't have any veterans there now?
Yes. I think outside of Motor, I think Daniel Jones leads the rest of the team in rushing yards. So it's very much a case of unproven backs being there. Sort of. Tracy, obviously, he's had a couple of little flashes, but nothing like you'd sort of get too excited about. If I was Dave's, obviously, if Singletary's a no-go, elevate Turbo Miller, give him a shot. Running back by committee. Eric Gray, I don't see what Eric Gray gives this offense at this moment in time. You never know. He might come out and have 25 carries for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. We can hope, we can dream, but it's very unlikely. But you never know. But yeah, I've got no faith that Eric Gray can get it done. So elevate Turbo Miller, have him, Tyron Tracy, and a little bit of Eric Gray if needs be. Just sort of as a mixing it up, so then it's not so predictable. But obviously, the run game, it then complements the passing game, and it then opens up the playbook. And if you can't establish a run, you become very one-dimensional, like we did last week. And look what happened.
One player, Shane, that we really do need to see more of, because it's one person who's going to help open up those lanes, is Mr. Up Down himself, Jakob Johnson, who really, when he's on the field, we do tend to pick up yards. Do you think this is the kind of perfect game plan to have him in the backfield a lot?
I think they're going to have to rely on him for quite a big factor that I think is the reason that Gray and Tracy aren't getting many snaps. And I just don't think either of them are proficient enough in pass blocking. I think that's what's keeping them off the field quite a lot, if I'm honest. I think, when you look at Eric Gray, you kind of drafted him last year. He's their guy, so to speak, and he can't even get on the field. He looked okay running the ball in pre-season, but I just think his pass blocking's letting him down, and Tracy, it's going to be kind of a little bit in at the deep end, so to speak. So I think, they are going to have to rely on Jakob Johnson in particular in regards to, like I say, his pass blocking, because I don't think either of the other two backs are anything special in that area, and I feel like that's been a problem for the Giants running backs, at least since I've been a fan. It was an area that Saquon wasn't exactly amazing at either.
No, absolutely spot on, really. It has improved for Brasillo. I know that Singletary was quite high on the blocking grades for PFF, and I know the others are around there as well, but they've had so few pass blocking snaps that all you have to do is have one or two good, and you're probably going to get a 70-80. So it will obviously give us a big indication of how this game's going to go early when we see how they can stand up. I mean, as Tim was saying earlier, there's no real threat from their defensive line's banged up a bit, and they're not really as good as they have been. So maybe that's one thing that might play into our hands. But then again, we said the exact same thing about the Cowboys. It almost feels like if you had one of Singletary or one of Nabers, then you would still have some confidence. But the fact that we're staring at the thought of having both of them out, it's almost like the straw that breaks the camel's back, really, for this offense, and it's going to be very, very hard to move the ball, I think.
Yeah, big time. And like I said, I think the pressure is probably more on the coaches to design this offensive game plan than it is on any particular single player, because they're going to need to do something. And this Seattle defense isn't fantastic, so we can exploit it, but it all comes down to game plan, play designs, getting the right players involved, and hopefully we see a more even spread from Daniel Jones across the field rather than always targeting the same one or two players. At least hopefully the likes of Hyatt, the likes of Slayton, And obviously, even like Hodgins, if he gets promoted from the practice squad, hopefully they get targets as well, and we see more of them on the field because, yes, like I said, Nabers and Singletary will be big losses this weekend. Alrighty then. It's defense time. And although we haven't given up a huge amount of points this season so far, or over the last 3 games anyway, teams are averaging just under 21 points a game. We find ourselves up against probably our toughest offensive opponent yet in Seattle. They seem to score points for fun. Obviously, they put up 29 against Detroit last week, albeit they lost. But to put 29 points up in a game that you lose is pretty damn good. It's more points than we put up in any game this season. So, it's going to be a tough ask this weekend for this defense. My 2 keys to victory: number 1, force turnovers. So there's only 5 teams with the worst turnover differential in the NFL and the Giants, and Seattle are one of them. They've given the ball away 6 times over the first 4 games, with 4 of them coming from Geno Smith and throwing interceptions. He's got as many picks as he does touchdown passes, so we really need to exploit his apparent knack of giving the ball away, essentially. But here's the big but: our secondary. Obviously, last week we were without Adoree Jackson and Drew Phillips. I think it's going to be touch and go whether they go this week or not, but it's looking promising. So we could potentially have them back. But our secondary has yet to intercept a pass this season, with the only one coming from rookie Darius Mursal in week 1 against the Vikings in garbage time, essentially. So having Drew Phillips and Adoree Jackson back this week is kind of much needed, really. We need that sort of strength back in the secondary. But so far, Shane Bowen's scheme has seen very soft coverage against the likes of Justin Jefferson, against the likes of the Washington guy, Terry McLaurin, and then obviously against CeeDee Lamb last Thursday as well. It's very soft. There's not much pressure on them. I want to see more press, especially when we're man coverage. I want to see more press. I want to see more actually just the coverage needs to be better. Don't get me wrong, the coverage has been okay, but it just needs to be tighter. They need to be tighter to the man. They don't need to give them 3-4 yards of time and let them make a move. And then as soon as they make that move, you've lost them, and they're catching the ball for a big gain. But we've got the likes of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba coming up this weekend, and that trio alone, that scares the hell out of me against this secondary, even if we do have Drew Phillips and Adoree Jackson back. So it will make it an extremely tough game for this defensive backfield this weekend. Now, Craig, there's been a lot of chatter this week about Tay Banks and his rough start to the season, but how do you see him faring this week? Most likely, going to be in man coverage against another top receiver in DK Metcalf.
Yeah, DK is probably one of the most physical and probably one of the strongest receivers in the league. Just look at him; he's an absolute animal. So it doesn't get any easier for Tay. I know he's been called out by Jerome Henderson today, and he's kind of held his hands up and said, yeah, I get it. I gave up on play against who was it, against Lamb early on in the Cowboys game. Well, he didn't say that he gave up, but he just said, he thought his angle was wrong and stuff. But if you look at the tape, he just slows down. You've got to stick with it. And I don't know what's happened. I don't know if it can't be a confidence issue, because you look at Banks when he's being interviewed and he's still that kind of chill, quirky guy that he always was. But I don't know, something's not right this season. Obviously, it doesn't help that Adoree has kind of come back and been out, and he's having to cover up for the fact that it is the weakest positional group on the Giants. It really is. So it's not been easy, but you definitely expect more, especially the draft capital essentially that we've used on him. It's a first round pick. You expect more. He's really got to play well. He's really got to show up against a big receiver. He has gone up against I think somebody on X called it the death row lineup of receivers. But every team has a good wide receiver one. That's the point in having a wide receiver one. Every team has one. And the way that the game's going is that the majority of teams have a really, really good one. There's only like 2 or 3 teams I could think of that potentially don't have a game breaker at that position. So it's always going to be tough as a cornerback one, but we need him to step up now. It's rough, but learn from your mistakes.
That's why cornerbacks get paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's not an easy position to play. Shane, what do you reckon about Banks' struggles this season? Do you think he's obviously going into his second season? Obviously, his rookie year was pretty good, but he seems to be sort of making a few more mistakes this year than he did last year. What do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know if you can just put it down to scheme or maybe, and let's not kind of forget about these wide receiver ones like creators that wide receiver ones for a reason, and they're paid very, very, very handsomely. And maybe they've just got a little bit more tape on Banks, and maybe Banks has got some tells that maybe we haven't picked up on, but these wide receiver ones get paid that money, and it could be something ever so slightly that he's very minuscule, but to them they're like, okay, I know full well he does this tell, I can, maybe wrong foot him or off balance him or something like that. I mean, like I'll be honest with you, I thought it was a bit of a disgrace last week for the jog play that he made when Lamb caught him. Whether you're going to catch him or not, I don't give a toss. You're out there, we're getting beat. You chase that Derwin. You don't jog, even if you know you're not going to catch him. At least put the effort in. So if Banks is having struggles, he's not playing great, I can accept that. What I can't accept is a lack of effort.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a young player. He's only in his second year. We expect him to make mistakes, but it's how you rectify those mistakes and how you overcome, the sort of adversity as such. And he doesn't seem to sort of be learning from his mistakes as much as he did last year. When he made mistakes last year, you saw him sort of quickly. He would change and he wouldn't make that mistake again. Whereas now it's almost like he makes a mistake and then he doesn't really change, and he still goes out and plays the same way as he was before. And it's almost like, is he being told just to sort of keep his distance from receivers, or is he just is he doubting himself? Is his confidence, a bit shot and sort of a bit through the floor at the moment? I don't know, but he just doesn't seem like the same player as he was last year. And like you said, maybe obviously teams are going to have more tape on him now than they did last year, but just something doesn't seem quite right with him this year. And maybe it's that step up to cornerback one that, he's obviously now being thrust into the spotlight, covering the opposition's best receivers. Maybe he's not quite at that level of a CB1 yet, and he is more comfortable as a CB2. But then that's down to the front office. They should have made some moves in the off season and brought in somebody that is potentially a good enough CB1 rather than leave him to it. But there we go. Tay Banks, it's a big game for him again. And like I said, against Tyler Lockett and against Smith and Jigba, and you've got the likes of Noah Fant at tight end as well. It's going to be a lot for this coverage, coverage part of this defense to deal with on Sunday. My second point and my second key of the game on defense to win this game is stop Kenneth Walker. It sounds simple, doesn't it? Stop Kenneth Walker. But I mean, he's a bit of an athletic freak, isn't he? The play you mentioned earlier with Tim Craig about that sort of in week one. If you haven't seen it, the videos are on all social channels, YouTube, X, wherever you'll see the video of him. That the play's ridiculous, and not many players make that. But he's an elite running back in this league. Obviously, he missed 2 games due to injury. He's back in the lineup now, and he made a pretty bold statement last week against Detroit with 3 touchdowns on the ground as well. Bill says from Duggan, since we're talking about a DB coach, Jerome Henderson, on how Deontay Banks finished his play, didn't like it, likes nothing about it. There you go. Says it all, done it. So Kenneth Walker, three rushing touchdowns last week. against the Detroit Lions. He made a bit of a bang coming back into the side after having 2 games out with injury, averaging 5.7 yards per carry this season across his 2 games. And the Seahawks coach Mike Macdonald, he said this week that the offense will be leaning more on him to produce, and I don't doubt that he'll produce. Our run D ranks 15th in rushing yards allowed per game with 118.8 and 24th in yards allowed per carry at 4.7, which over the last 2 weeks has improved. We've only allowed 69 and 80 yards respectively against Cleveland and Dallas, but that was against Cleveland and Dallas. Cleveland and Dallas don't have Kenneth Walker. Albeit Nick Chubb was out for the Cleveland game, but they don't have Kenneth Walker. Against the Vikings and the Commanders, we saw Aaron Jones and Brian Robinson Jr. essentially just run all over us and do what they wanted. And Kenneth Walker's burnt us before. The last 2 seasons, he scored in both games, and he tends to run for big chunks of yardage. It's not small little runs from Kenneth Walker. It's 4, 5, 6 yards a carry, and we really can't afford to let him do that on Sunday. This Seattle offense is absolutely loaded with weapons in both the run and passing games. But what's key is to stop Walker and this Russian offense. That includes Zach Charbonnet as backup, which he's not a bad backup to have. We've got to stop the run game, force him into the air, and force Geno into making mistakes. And it's a big ask for this defense this week against one of the league's top offenses. But Shane, do you think our game plan needs to be more aggressive, like we saw against Cleveland, against this potentially weakened Seattle offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'll be honest with you, because obviously I was working at the start of this week, and then I've kind of flew it here to Spain, so I'm not 100% up to date on all the news. But obviously, I listened to the interview just on about the weakness to the Seattle offensive line. If it's anything kind of weakened to even slightly weakened to the extent that the Cleveland Browns was, I think that sending the house is going to be key. Like we've said, cornerback issues or secondary issues that we've got that we fully expected this season as well. Maybe we can try and cover those a little bit by trying to get to that quarterback a little bit quicker, forcing throwaways, forcing scrambles potentially. I think whether it'll be the level of blitzing that it was against Cleveland, maybe not, but I anticipate it to potentially be a lot more than it was last week against Dallas.
Craig, we've got the pass rushers to put the pressure on Geno Smith and force him into making mistakes. Do we need to see that fearsome pass rush this week?
Absolutely. Brian Burns been brought in for a reason. We bang on about it every week, and we really still haven't seen an explosive game from him. Thibodeau had a much better game against the Cowboys than he has recently. Hopefully that's him turning a corner. Again, they're getting used to a new defensive scheme. I know it feels like a bit of a cop-out to say that, but it is true, and it does change. I think the big thing here, and what Tim was saying, is that from the interior perspective, that's really where they are the weakest. And let's be honest, we have the best nose tackle in the game. If they're going to double team him, we really need Nacho and Chapman to attack, basically. And if they've got a poor left guard and right guard combo, they're going to be going up against probably one of their easier matchups of the season. Take advantage of it. The one thing that Nacho has always been kind of poor at, especially last year, in our first year of seeing him, was the pass rush. It was just non-existent, and it's one thing that we to rely on Dax, but we can't just rely on Dax. The Cowboys had a game plan to kind of get him out of the way and stifle him by triple teaming and double teaming him pretty much on every play. I'm pretty sure they broke a record on the amount of times that they double teamed Dex during that game. And as much as all the pundits wanted to go mental about Cooper Beebe, Dex shut that down quite quickly by saying, yeah, but you needed help all the time. So if that's the game plan, you need the other guys to take advantage of it. Tim was saying, Charles Cross is probably their best tackle. And we took a specific Evan Neal over Charles Cross, and I know that Shane will agree with me here, but he wasn't a Charles Cross fan. It just coming out of college, it just wasn't. He wasn't impressed by him, and to be honest, he's had a good start to the season, but he hasn't shown anything to really change that narrative. I wouldn't have thought so. We just need to. I don't know if blitzing's going to be the right thing to do and going all out blitz because as they said, Gino gets the ball out so quickly that he has he has the ability to punish us, but it's going to have to be almost like relying on a 4-man rush and hoping they get home. But we really should. Like, at what point do we just turn around and say we've screwed up? We've screwed up on our defensive line because we can't get Dex the help that he needs.
It's almost like, we see other teams do it. We see Myles Garrett do it for Cleveland a lot. He moves around on that defensive line so much. He moves from the left side to the right side, and you don't know whether you're going to come up against him or not in terms of on the offensive side of things. So why can our sort of DNs, I suppose, our outside linebackers not sort of switch sides and show different looks? Everything seems so scripted, and so it's almost like it's expected. We expect Dex to shore up the middle of the defense, no issue. Kenneth Walker is he can do the damage on jump into the outside and sort of going around the tackles that way. Shane, do you think tackling is key to bringing Kenneth Walker down this week?
Probably the key is to get about 3 or 4 guys around him. Just and kind of hope for the best. Obviously, I will say that I don't think you want to kind of have too many one-on-ones with him. In all honesty, but I think the key thing is you're gonna have some missed tackles. I think that's it's the nature of the beast, so to speak. But it's just limited the amount of missed tackles that we do have.
Yes. There's been far too many. The Cowboys game wasn't as bad, but the first 3 weeks, there's far too many, and we really need to cut down on them. We've said it so many times. We need to cut down on those missed tackles. All right, defense. That's me done. Those are my keys to the game. Stop Kenneth Walker, force turnovers, and let's get this pass rush going against this weak offensive line. Craig, we got the latest injury report, mate.
Yeah, so the Giants have announced theirs.
Not for reading.
No, I mean, Malik Nabers is out with the concussion. Devin Singletary doubtful with the groin injury. And then Adoree Jackson and Andrew Phillips are recovering from their calf injuries. They're listed as questionable, but you can hope that they're ready to go. And linebacker Matthew Adams, who's been dealing with a quad injury and was on IR, was activated, and he's questionable. Don't know if it might be too soon for him, but obviously a very, very good special teamer. In Adams, so would be good to see him out there. We haven't had, at least I haven't seen, an up-to-date injury report from the Seahawks. They've got so many players on some kind of listing for injury. I mean, if you look at a couple of days ago, defensive tackle Byron Murphy, hamstring injury, didn't participate. You had Hankins and Tyrese Knight, who both were non-injury related, personal issues. And then they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 9 players on limited participation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and whether any of them really do play. As Tim said, one thing to bear in mind is quick turnaround, 5 days until they face the 49ers on Thursday Night Football. That really could kind of do to make them second guess the way that they manage their injuries, especially for key players. Someone like Julian Love, do they really want to push him out there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've just had a look on X, and half an hour ago, Seattle released their latest injury report, which is typical. Out of the game, Byron Murphy and Cameron Young. Doubtful, no players listed. Questionable, Boy Maffei. Yeah. And sorry if I'm destroying his name. It's a pretty easy one to say. And Julian Love, questionable. They're the only 4 players listed on the injury report. Considering yesterday there was about 30.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go. Interesting. Yeah, ours isn't pretty reading, obviously, but we knew way beforehand that Nabers was out, but it's not a good sign. All right, predictions then. It's prediction time. Viewers, get them in the comments. It's me as usual. Viewers, get them in the comments. Let's see your predictions as well. So Seattle are currently favoured by 6.5 points, and obviously are favoured as well on the money line. The massive thing here for me is the fact that Malik Nabers isn't going to be playing, and Devin Singletary is a big doubt as well. It's going to be a tough game on both sides of the ball against this Seattle team that started the season pretty hot. I can't see us winning. I honestly can't. I want to keep the faith. I want to go for a Giants win, but I cannot see it happening on Sunday. So I've gone for a 27-13 Seahawks win.
Quick one for you. If we'd have had Nabers and Singletary, would you have gone for a Giants win?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
He doesn't lose the faith. Shane. You should know this.
No, I just can't see us winning this game this weekend. Really
right,
can't.
Shane.
Who's up next? Is it Kev?
Kev's up next. Shane, what do you think? Kev's got?
Giants win. Giants win, 100%.
Has he kept the faith?
Oh, wow.
Shut up! No way.
Jeez,
So
Kev.
Kev's gone for a 28-21 Seahawks win.
Kev,
I mean,
we need explanations, bro.
What's
happened?
Just on that, we score 3 touchdowns? Really? Or is that 7 field goals? It's got to be 7 field goals, right? Surely. Shane, how much are you predicting Seattle win by?
I think, did I go for a 10-20? Yeah, I did.
Low scoring affair. Nice. And Craig, is it a clean sweep for the Seahawks, or are you lone wolf?
Craig, I swear to God, if you've ruined this nice little green line that's going on down the bottom, I'm going to be so disappointed. You're my wingman now, like you're the one I always rely on.
I wouldn't say it's a nice green line. I'd rather a nice blue line.
So would I. I'd rather win the lottery as well, and that ain't going to happen either.
The funny thing is, I was looking at Shane. Shane almost looks confused by his own sort of prediction there. Like he said 20.
I remember. I know I sent it you, but I was like, did I say? Because I went back and forth on about 4 different score lines, and I don't even remember when I sent it. Yeah, because I think I sent it kind of off the cuff.
Yeah, you did. So right. Of course, it's a clean sweep. I mean, I've got them scoring the most points against us as well, with 17-30 loss. So, and to answer your question, Shane, if Nabers and Singletary were playing, you could add another 7 points onto my score for the Giants, but that'll be it.
Fair. That's fair. Oh dear, it's not going to be. I mean, hopefully, hopefully we all get proven wrong this weekend, and the Giants walk away with a win. But how likely is that to happen?
Not very.
Holt has gone for a 31-10 Seahawks win. Wow, that'll be a horrendous blowout. Darren said it's going to be a loss, but hoping we keep it close and not a blowout. Yeah, same. I think we're all hoping for a mayonnaise evening. Giants 9, Seahawks 7. I mean, I'll take that. It's a win, even if it is for three field goals.
3 field goals.
Tell you
Or
what,
a touchdown and a safety.
I'd be so glad I'm not going to be watching that game if that was a scoreline.
Oh God, it'd be awful, and especially being a 9:25 game as well.
Exactly.
And
You're
being at work
Monday morning.
6 o'clock Monday morning. Yeah, so
course you have.
yeah, man, you know it. Dedication is the one. But yes, it seems like it's a clean sweep apart from mayonnaise for the Seahawks this week in our predictions. So he's gone. There we go. Touchdown and safety. I mean, I'll take that because the defense will be scoring some points. Go on. How serious he is, I don't know. But yeah, there's our predictions. So it's not looking pretty. Unfortunately, though, that is all we've got time for this evening. We'll be back on Tuesday at 8:30 to review the Seahawks game, and hopefully it's not going to be another therapy session. Hopefully we'll have something positive to talk about, and we won't have to look back and look at where the game was lost, because I know we say we're going to be here throughout, but it doesn't ever become fun talking about a Giants loss. So hopefully we're not talking about another loss and it's not another therapy session. Anything else to add before we go, guys?
No, it's good getting on. Looking forward to getting some pictures from Kev, who's out there this weekend. And like I say, yeah, hopefully the Giants win. And other than that, hopefully people come and join us for the watch party in London in November. My memory's getting really bad these days.
4 weeks time, mate.
I'm going to put it down to the Giants losing every week.
As Shane kind of alluded to there, Kev is currently out in Seattle. He arrived last night, I believe, and we'll hopefully have a few pictures from the game that we'll throw up on our socials, so kind of keep an eye out for that. Apart from that, just kind of stick with us. It's still early. I watched the Giant Insider podcast earlier today or yesterday, I can't remember. And there are so many people who still say that the Giants internally in the building believe that they're only, one player really
a quarterback away.
Well,
let's just say what it is.
Jerry said the quarterback away, but there are a lot of people in there who do feel like we're so close to potentially winning some games with this team this year. We just need to see it, and it will be nice to do. I mean, the schedule doesn't get any easier. It's pretty rough up until we go to Munich. The way the Commanders are looking, that meet-up game is looking tougher and tougher by the week. So
it's tough. There's a tough slate of games coming up over the next few weeks. Obviously, with being one of the first, the first one of them. Dallas was I would say an easier game last week, and we couldn't get the win there, so it's going to be really tough this week. There you go. It's that month-long session you have for the Euros, Shane.
Trust me.
It's catching up with you. And obviously, this week the Eagles are on a bye. Dallas is going to Pittsburgh on Sunday night. It's a big opportunity to close the gap to those above us in the division this weekend. The Commanders should breeze past Cleveland pretty easily, really. So we need to get that W to keep the division tight. I think lose here, we might as well start to look forward to next season. I mean, we are already, but I think we really start to look forward to next season. Historically, 9% of teams who start the season 1-4 make the playoffs, with only 8 teams in history with a 1-4 or worse record making it to the postseason. So I think we lose here, and it's essentially going to be game over. So we're hoping for a win. It's unlikely to happen, but we'll be back with you on Tuesday to let you know and to bring you that review. Make sure you check out our socials for all the latest news. Follow the links in the description. Give the episode a big thumbs up, and feel free to give it a rating on your platform of choice, podcast platform of choice. There we go. Thanks to everyone watching and listening for your comments this evening. We appreciate the love as always. My thanks as ever go to Craig and to Shane for joining me. To those watching and listening, we're signing off until next time. Let's go Giants.